Good evening, everybody. It is Wednesday, February 16th, and we're here tonight to convene the public work session on the police department's budget. And with that, I will turn it over to the chief and Karen. Okay.
So on February 11th, we met with the police commission. We went through, had a budget work session and spoke about our proposal for our FY23 budget. The instructions we received from the city manager was to create a status quo budget with no new staffing and no new programs. Any new additions were to be identified separately for a discussion with the commission, city manager, and the councilor. I'll detail those further in our presentation. To build our budget, we use a strategic plan. In our current strategic plan, it's a 5-year plan that's in place, so that doesn't look like we're recreating the wheel every year or asking for things that we didn't have a plan for. This document outlines a 5-year plan for staffing and initiatives, and it's a living, working document. The items in our strategic plan, we can move forward, we can move back, and delete if we, in out years, we feel they are no longer necessary. But overall, this document guides us through our budget process. We formalized our planning process as a part of the accreditation cycle and began producing this 5-year strategic plan to be more transparent in our initiatives and staffing needs. Speaking on accreditation, it's part of our strategic plan. We are currently in year 4 of our reaccreditation process. As indicated on the slide, every year of the reaccreditation process, we are required to provide 1,000 proofs of compliance. Our reaccreditation on-site assessment and 4-year file review is set for February of 2023. We anticipate earning our 2nd accreditation certification award for CLEAR at that time. Speaking on staffing, due to COVID, we had a delay in trying to add additional officers in prior years, and this year we are requesting the additional 2 officers, which would give us a 69th and 70th officer to our force. These positions were once approved and funded, but were lost during tight budget years, during tight budget years, during times in the financial crisis. It's important to point out that it takes up to 3 to 4 months to get a candidate through our extensive hiring process, then months at the police academy, followed by a few months more of training in a field training program before an officer is ready to be put solo on the street. Approving an officer for July 1st, we will not see that officer on the road until the spring if it's a new non-certified officer. This time period can be shortened slightly if we hire a certified officer. The goals and achievements, the strategic plan keeps help moving us forward. In current year, fiscal year FY22, we've had these following accomplishments. New firearms deployed. Majority of that was covered through donations through the Weber monies we received. We are in the process of implementing e-ticketing, which will be deployed within FY22, before the end of FY22. We placed our animal control vehicle, took her out of a pickup truck and converted her into one of our older police SUVs. We used a combo of funds and remaining grants and budget monies to purchase a new drone. Just like cell phones, our drones, the technology changes by the day. So we were able to upgrade and get some better equipment. We outfitted our auxiliaries with tasers. In the past, our auxiliaries didn't carry tasers, although our full-time officers are all equipped with tasers, so we're able to now equip our auxiliary force. We purchased a CERT van. It was outfitted with Weber funds and other outside donations. It's almost ready to deploy. It's being completed as we speak. This replaces a 23-year-old van that had to be towed from a scene on a few occasions as it was on its last leg. In our investigative division, we re-implemented a family services division to include juvenile and elderly, and that was something that we had projected out in our strategic plan. Now that code restrictions are lifted, we are pushing forward with our professional development and training, sending some of our supervisors, well, me to the FBI Academy, and some other perf and executive management training. FY22, we just completed our RFP for a new CAT RMS system. It's just being gone through our legal department now, but should be released within the next few days. Recruiting has been a big issue. It's been tough finding eligible candidates, but fortunately we've kind of weathered the storm and have been able to find some officers. And FY22 we've had to hire 6 officers that have come to us. Fortunately, they were all certified police officers and come to us from all over the country. We're still recruiting heavily for dispatchers, and that's been a tough position to fill, but we have hired 2 so far this year.
And Chief, just to point out, the 6 hires have been to replace people retiring.
Correct. Retiring or have resigned. Looking at the FY23 budget impacts, through the Commission on Law Enforcement and Accountability Committee transfer to the LEAC committee that was created by the governor. One of the rulings that came out there is some additional training that all our officers have to go through over the next 3 years. It was 24 hours. FY22, we had set aside 6 hours per officer in overtime, which is the majority of officers, when they go through training, it costs us overtime because it's got to be during their off time. In FY23, we've assigned 9 additional hours per officer to the amount of $40,346, and the final year of FY24 will be an additional 9 officers, so that we meet the standard as put in place by the LEAC committee. FY23 budget impacts. Looking at the status quo, and Karen, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but our current FY22 budget is approximately $12.5 million. If you go with salary steps and the cost of living increase, the budget increase there is approximately $178,000. With an executive order from the LEAC group with increased training, that's $40,000. Workman's comp increase is $7,000. We have yet to get a final figure for health insurance and leave at termination. There's still a handful of employees within the department that can sell back their time when they leave the department. And there was a plan put in place to put a fund balance in there at leave termination so that we don't see a spike in our budget. If, like in this last year, we had several people retire. It could have been expensive without that. Other operating expenses come out to 1%, $8,200, with a total operating increase of $73,850. Can you explain what that is, Karen?
On all the other operating, we put in a COLA, usually a 1% COLA on our other operating, and then the additional increases are things like the Gray Key software that we use to do investigations on electronics. everything from the FTO software, the additions that we needed. Even though it's no new programs and whatnot, these are things we need to operate. So we had to add in different things that totaled 73,000.
Okay. So with that, our preliminary increase projected increase is $307,625 for a 2.45% increase, and that's just a status quo budget
Just status quo.
for a total of $12,861,000. Now, in addition to that, the increases that we are looking for moving forward in FY23 budget would be the restoration of the 69th and 70th police officers at 81.5 apiece. We'd like to restore our crime analysts for a sum of $58,700, and we are putting a request in for classification and compensation study and adjustment of wages for our sworn staff with a proposal of $315,000. The total request for the above status quo would be $536,000, $536,700, for an increase of 4.27%. As you can see in this chart here, that the majority of our budget is made up of salary and benefits. That's 85% of our budget. Overtime is 5%. Other operating expenses is 7%, and city obligations is 2%. And Karen, can you just city obligations explain what that is?
The city obligations is the leave at term and workers' comp.
All right. Thank you.
Karen, can you also elaborate on the overtime percentage and in particular highlight the challenges associated with dispatch and some of the other areas that drive that in part?
Okay, our overtime, especially with dispatch this year, they are significantly overexpended in their budget unit, only because we've had to hire firemen, other police officers to cover shifts because we've had so many vacancies. I think at one time we had 3 dispatchers out of 9.
So really understaffed.
So, and we've also had to train, so there's training overtime in addition to coverage overtime. And then in reference to just the overtime, 5% of our budget, as I was explaining to Commissioner Scher today, it's not a large piece of our budget, but it's the most controversial part of our budget. And nobody can just do overtime. It has to be approved by a supervisor. It's reviewed at different levels. And even if we're overexpended in overtime, like I reported on our police commission meeting yesterday, we have salary savings if we have vacancies. And what we try and do is make sure that we don't go over that salary savings by the overage of the overtime budget.
And I think it's also worth noting that one of the challenges with the staffing model we have is that we end up having people have to get called in because we just don't have enough people
lot
in
of
the
overruns.
system. So if you have people who get ill, especially with COVID, we've had some people deployed for National Guard. So anyway, this is one of those areas where it's a function of staffing size and the realities of trying to be
Right.
working 24/7.
And the hopes is, if we can add the additional 2 officers, that will help cut into the overtime. But there's so many intangibles, like you said, we had 2 officers that were deployed for a year, and we have minimum staffing levels that we have to maintain. We are short-staffed because we had a bunch of retirements all at once, and, it takes time to train officers up. So that means you have to backfill those positions with overtime. So year to year, those are things that sometimes are out of our control. Special events, like this year we had the Seacoast Rep where we had, put a lot of manpower into that event, and it was a lot of overtime that is not necessarily something we planned for in our budget. We have an overtime budget to get us through the year, but, events like that, or last year we had the protests, can cause spikes that this happened, so.
Fair to say that if we get back up to the full quota of dispatchers and we're able to add the 69th and 70th officers, that without really being able to predict, it will stabilize to some extent the amount of overtime over the course of a year.
Yes.
Right, and when we're not contending with a pandemic that results in deployments and other things too. I mean, I think that extraordinary set of circumstances in the last 2 years.
The confluence thereof.
Right. Exactly. Sorry, thanks, Chief.
So moving on to the next slide, talking about, we added in here our capital improvement plan. Commission asked to have this included into our budget just so, residents are aware. City capital improvement plan contains any projects over 50,000. We have the following projects that fall into that category. Under building and infrastructure, we have 3 projects identified. One is under land for the proposal of a new police station. At this time, there's $0 allocated towards that, as we are not sure if we'll have to purchase. That's just there in case we have to purchase some private land, but at the point we're at now, we're looking to use land that's already owned by the city. The second project is the new police facility. This project's estimated to be $42 million. The request for FY23 is $40,600,000. We did a study completed in 2014 that determined the current facility doesn't meet the space or law enforcement needs of our department. The council approved $50,000 of prior CIP for site selection and vetting of a few sites. Last fiscal year, the council allocated $1.4 million for preliminary design once a prospective site is chosen. So we're still in that first stage of finding a selection, trying to find a site to put the police station on. So as we go through those steps, we will start to dig into that 1.4 million, and then we'll be looking for the bonding of the remaining balance to move forward with the project, which will take a few years before, if it got approved, to be complete.
So, Chief, just to put a fine point on that, the request is not that the city write a check for $42 million this week. It's instead to continue to advance the planning and preparation for building a new facility.
Correct. So we would just be trying to bond that, but the money would only be released as we continue to the project. So it would be over time.
Do you have a sense of the, in the ideal world, understanding that it's a conversation with the city council, ongoing conversation, the timeline for?
The timeline is if the FY23 CIP got approved for that money, we would probably, in a best case scenario, it would be 3 years before we move into a building, at a best case scenario.
And again, we started this work when I was on the city council in 2014, which was many years ago now. And as the community has hopefully heard, we've had challenges with this existing facility, which we've been occupying now for 30 years. And in the last 5 years, it's become increasingly untenable with the current conditions relative to mold and water and other damage. So
the third request in the CIP is to address the deficiencies and continue repairs of our current facility. Our request in FY23 has been for an additional $400,000. This project addresses major repair issues with the current facility, gets the department buy until a new facility can be funded and built. Police department's been allocated $400,000 in FY21, $400,000 in FY22 to address these needs. However, those funds have been primarily redirected to address our mold and asbestos issues and never got appropriated to what we had planned on using for them and trying to upgrade our current facility. So those funds have been used to address our HVAC issues and the mold problems that are currently going on within the department. We're also trying to address our back parking lot that we've been trying to upgrade for several years for security purposes, where we park our police vehicles. In FY23, with the mold and applicable problems anticipated to be resolved, the department is requesting the $400,000 on this slide to start addressing the delayed projects. originally identified when the project was introduced 2 years ago, such as redoing our IT control room where all our servers are placed, and the conditions that the room is in now is not safe, and if where they are, there's some pipes there that if they burst would cause us some serious problems. We've been trying to upgrade our locker rooms to accommodate our current staffing levels. We've been fortunate enough to hire several new female officers, and both locker rooms for our females and men need some serious attention, but much more the women's locker room than the men's.
This, just to be clear, this $400,000 request is just to keep the department fit enough until there's a move to a new building.
Correct. Yeah. Equipment, use this to buy equipment, archive, and evidence storage space. We have a shortage of storage space within our department, so we have been trying to make accommodations for that and create some new spaces within our current facility that we would use this $400,000 for storage, to make some more storage. As I said before, repair our back parking lot, make it more secure, fix the crumbling retaining wall back there. We're trying to update our evidence submittal room and our evidence room, which we've had flooding problems. And we also looking for some additional office space because we have several offices that are internal and have no windows. So to try to make it more of a comforted work environment, try to find space that people have access to light.
And just to be clear, right now, the vast majority of the department is operating on the lower level, so they are essentially in the basement.
Right. Or just that they have no access to windows.
No,
and
yeah,
light.
there are no windows.
We're also looking to add 2 garage bays as we are a shortage of storage for vehicles. We currently have 3 vehicles between a drove van, the CERT vehicle, and our evidence processing room that take up all of our 3 bays in our garage now. So when we have to bring in a car to process, we don't have a place to put it, so we have to pull those vehicles out, and those vehicles need to stay inside due to several issues. With one, that make the vehicles last longer, but also all the equipment that's on the vehicles need to be in a heated environment.
Just a point of clarification, when you refer to the CERT van, what is that?
So, and Mike is the commander of the CERT team, but we are a member of the Seacoast Emergency Response Team, and we store the vehicle, one of the vehicles, actually two of the vehicles here in our facility. Prior to the team, actually, well, I don't know if the team was created. Portsmouth Police, we had our own SWAT team prior to joining the CERT team, so we had a lot of the equipment that the CERT team still uses, so we've been housing that here.
So the
CERT is
CERT team
Seacoast Emergency Response Team.
So it's what used to be called SWAT team.
Yeah, our own personal SWAT team, but now it's a regional team that we participate in. But like, as I said, we had a majority of the equipment prior to joining that team, so we have the facility to host it. So, we have an equipment van, which we talked about, we're getting a new one. And then we have a Bearcat, which is an armored vehicle that we store here.
And to be clear, the CERT van, which the chief highlighted earlier in the presentation, was grant funded. So Portsmouth taxpayer dollars are not going to.
Both the vehicles were grant funded.
Right.
So there's some ADA ramps that need to be put out back in the Sally Port to put us in compliance. Is the last piece of some of that, where that $400,000 will go.
So, Chief, can I ask, presuming the council decides to move full speed ahead on a new facility, how would that affect the allocation of resources relative to the current space? I know most of what you've articulated is stuff that should have been done years ago,
Right.
but if we know a new facility's in the works in the next 3 years. Would that?
Yeah, that would definitely impact what some of those projects, I mean, there's some projects that have to be done. It's, upgrading the HVAC system, removing the molds. Like I said, we're probably talking at best 3 years, so like some of the locker room upgrades, bathroom upgrades. But, like the evidence submittal room, putting in new storage areas, that's something we may be able to hold off on and get us through until a new facility is built, so it just be depending on how long we have to wait.
Right.
All right. Also under the CIP, information systems are all our IT equipment, rolling stock, such as servers, laptops, the rugged laptops that are in our cruisers, personal computers, and printers and mobile radios, which is covered under the city's side of the IT CIP.
Yep.
Under the CIP IT project, our new computer-aided dispatch and records management system, the full cost of this project is estimated to be about $1.3 million. The current software system, which is mission critical in our police department, is over 20 years old. The request for FY23 is $250,000 towards the purchase of this new system. Prior years of our CIP, we have a total of $400,000 to date. That's already been approved of the 1.3 million project total. The bid will be awarded this fiscal year, and implementation will begin in FY22 through FY23. The out years funding identified on the slide will address the remaining costs of this project through a payment plan with the vendor that we choose.
And I think it's worth highlighting here for folks that this request for the CAD RMS upgrades has been in the works for a long time. The planning and process has also been in the works for a long time. The software system is 20 years old, and as you can imagine, technology changes much faster than that. And so even things like geolocation is problematic right now with the current system. So also to the point that we've heard from many community members about opportunities to better understand citizen encounters between law enforcement and the community, being able to capture encounter data and track it in a better way. We couldn't possibly do that with the current system we have. So this has been a long time coming. I'm very excited for it.
And for example, and last night in our commission meeting, we had the UNH intern that has come in here to pull data, and she's been here for approximately 4 months and got 1 year's worth of data out of it.
Great.
So it tells you how cumbersome it is to try to pull things out of it.
And just the effort to capture the data and developing an RFP that is really going to be really beneficial to our whole community. I mean, the investment isn't just in the police department, it's in the response time for the community members, and so that the members of our community can have access to data.
All right. Lastly is our rolling stock. Police department currently has 37 vehicles that include patrol, black and white vehicles, detective cars, the animal control vehicle, and other vehicles like the crime scene van, training car, and motorcycles. The vehicles are set on a replacement schedule based on use. For example, patrol cars have a 5-year life and are usually retired at between 100 and 120,000 miles. When detectives' cars are rotated out approximately every 10 years because they don't get the use and the mileage yearly that our patrol cars are going, 24/7. We use some patrol cars if they have lower mileage when retired from that division as the school resource officer car, or as we just did with the animal control officer's car. We use our cars until they become burdensome with repairs, and they just get too expensive to continue putting them on the road. In our FY23 budget, we were asking for 5 vehicles. In our FY22 budget, we had initially asked for 5 vehicles, and we ended up with 2. And because of COVID and shipping delays and everything else related to the pandemic, our cars that we're trying to order from FY22, we're not going to get until FY23 because it's such a backlog in producing vehicles. So our cards will be at wit's end by FY23 budget hits. This concludes our FY23 budget public hearing. As we stated in the slide, please contact me or any of the commissioners if you have any other questions or proposals relative to our proposed budget. That's it.
Great. And any questions from either of the commissioners? No? Well, I just want to thank the team for putting this budget together, for all the hard work that's gone into it, for hearing what the priorities are, both in terms of what needs to happen within the department and how we can continue to advance and grow the work of the department. So I invite everyone who's watching and who's got an opinion about this process or wants to weigh in about our relative priorities, please reach out to any one of us and to the chief or anyone on the team. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank Karen for putting this together.
Yes, huge thanks to Karen. And ability to make sure we hit the budget numbers year after year after year. All right, this concludes the public session of our budget committee. Thank you. Have a good night.